But Dave,
Right.
what do you think about the Rangers' defense now? You know, you lose Mark Stahl. Do you think they did enough today, where they're all set competition-wise, depth-wise, or do they still need to add?
Well, you'd look like it's not, you know, Jack Johnson obviously is a veteran. I think they need this. Potato, who played out of Vancouver, he's got some veteran presence. You know, they're still pretty young back there. And I just think that you'd have to kind of look around and see who's still available that's going to fit. But the Rangers' issues are obviously the RFAs that they've got to deal with. And until that settles in, you have to believe that you're going to be pretty young on the blue line. Although Jack Johnson will fit nicely. He's a guy that's been around a little bit. He's got a history with JD and a history with Jacques Martin. So, you know, he's probably a little more aggressive than Mark Stahl. He's probably not as reliable in his own end as Stahl's been. But I wouldn't count Brandon Smith out of this mix either yet, as far as experience on the blue line.
Hey, Dave, it's Butch here. A quick question for you.
Hey, Butch, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, thank you. How was your golf game today, by
Good.
the way? Listen, I wanted to ask you about... Go ahead.
It stunk, which is normal. So, you know, I played the par, which stunk.
I wanted to ask you about Ryan Strome, Dave. He had a tremendous season and was tremendous chemistry with Panarin. Where do you see that all working out? Would that be a huge loss and if Ryan doesn't sign, or do you think that's a necessity for the Rangers?
It'd be a loss. It would be a loss. But again, you know, the pieces have to fit. They have to fit nicely, right? And that has to do with term and money. And, you know, I do think he would, you know, there's a thought that maybe it's time for Hedl to get a chance at that second spot, you know, at second center ice spot. Now, is he patient enough with the puck to be in the middle? If you can get Strome in the right deal that fits, because the whole D'Angelo thing's sitting over your shoulder too, and then there's term and all that stuff. So would it be a loss? Yeah, I think it would be a loss because I think Strome can play. He's certainly shown he can play with Panarin, and that's not easy. It's not easy to play with great players. And I think you can move him around in the lineup. He can play in the wing, and he's kind of a little more of a jack of all trades, despite the fact he's probably going to be counted on for his offense. So I do think that would be a bit of a setback if there's somehow between term and money, the Rangers couldn't get Ryan Strome. And he's quite a character. Very well respected in the room. And hey, listen, I know we talked about that a lot of times. At the end of the day, you got to be able to play. And I think last year, Strome showed he could play. He can play in different roles. And I think there's a lot with hope that he'd find a way back on Broadway.
Dave, how are you? Good to be with you, pal. Talking some hockey.
Kenny.
And I want to generalize a little bit about free agency as a whole. And some teams making a splash. We saw in day one, and the economic reasons as well. There was some low-hanging fruit there that teams plucked a little bit. They seem to want to be a little more responsible, rightfully so, in these uncertain times. And I'm a believer that so often you overpay and so often it hurts you down the road and hamstrings you. I'd like your opinion on that as far as when it's time to strike and go for that big free agent, or is now maybe this the time that owners kind of have had that restraint and might be a good thing because of the situation and the economics of it all right now?
Well, I think when you look at the past, 4 or 5 cup winners, there was a lot of patience. You know, you go back to Washington win, and they were a good team for, 10 of Ovi's 12 years before he won it, right? And you look at St. Louis, they had Pietrangelo and Tarasenko top picks, and Tampa, again, you have Hedman and Stamkos, although Stamkos is hurt. And I just think at the end of the day, it's always, especially if you are in the position to have top picks, lottery picks, and things like that. I've always thought that you have to build a chemistry. I've always thought that it's important to build from within. Something that the Rangers hadn't been for a long time. And I think they found that when you go back to the good years between 2012 and 15, you had 2 conference finalists and a Stanley Cup finalist in that run. And a lot of that stuff was growing from within. And then you add a Nash, you add somebody when you're ready to add. See, I think from a Rangers standpoint, the big splash was made last year. I think now they just got to let this thing. I heard you speak about the Devils, Kenny, and I think the Rangers have to let this thing grow a little bit. And so to answer your question, I do think maybe the management has been forced now, given the uncertainty of moving forward. They have to get people in the building. When you consider that 65% of the NHL revenue is created by people in the building. So there's a lot of unknown, and I think we've got to be very pleased that it seems that the players and the owners are on the same page. They capped it out for a couple of years. They're working around the money holdback from the players, the escrow money, and they extended the bargaining agreement. So a lot of things now, I think, have played out here. And then I think what else you to factor in, a lot of franchises locked up a lot of guys who might normally be free agents at this time, right? So I do think that the Times and maybe everybody should just kind of work from within and go from there.